Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror comedy movie called Miss Zombie. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens with a man on the phone, informing someone about the delivery he sent. He instructs the other person to care for the product, saying they can feed it anything except meat. He also mentions that if the product causes any problems, a gun has been provided to handle the situation. The man promises to retrieve it in a few days and hangs up. At this moment, we see that he has been brutally bitten by something, and his neck is nearly severed. In the following scene, we see a family consisting of a doctor named Teramoto, his wife, Shizuko, and their son, Kenichi. This morning, a large package has just been delivered to their house. Teramoto's two workers carefully open the package, which contains a large cage with a zombie woman named Sarah. She seems to be very docile and doesn't resist or react to anything. The family is shocked and doesn't know what to make of this strange delivery. Teramoto is annoyed with his friend for sending this, and he realizes that keeping her at home is dangerous. Hence, he orders his workers to lock her up in a warehouse within walking distance from their home. Later that night, we see Sarah sewing up her wounded skin. She then looks at a picture of herself from when she was a normal human and pregnant. Although she doesn't remember much of her past life, she still feels sadness and places her hands on her belly. The next morning, the neighborhood association manager arrives at Teramoto's house. It seems that the delivery man has been spreading the word about the zombie's arrival. The manager then scolds Teramoto, explaining how dangerous it is for everyone if he keeps a zombie around. This embarrasses Teramoto so much that he apologizes continuously. He admits that the zombie belongs to his friend and that he's only looking after her for a few days. He also reveals that Sarah has a low infection rate with the zombie virus, so she is almost human and won't attack people. Teramoto even shows the manager a gun, assuring him that if she tries to do anything, he won't hesitate to shoot her. Upon hearing all of this, the manager appears convinced and leaves the house. Later, Teramoto orders his two workers to dress up Sarah and bring her into the house so she can help with work. The workers then approach her and hand her a dress, asking her to put it on. While she does so, the two men begin to discuss zombies. They reveal that nowadays, zombies are captured and sold to wealthy families as butler slaves. Scientists have managed to eliminate their hunger and aggression by feeding them only plants instead of meat. It turns out that zombies also have levels, and the lower levels are more like humans. One of the workers mentions that Sarah is of a very low level, so she is perfect to be an obedient servant and won't cause any trouble. A while later, Sarah arrives at the main house, where Shizuko greets her and hands her a scrubbing brush. She then instructs the zombie to clean the garden tiles. Sarah obliges without any resistance and begins scrubbing the tiles. After a while, a worker notices that she isn't using water for the scrubbing. He then approaches her to show her how to do it properly. When she doesn't respond, the worker cruelly pours water on her and begins laughing. However, Sarah doesn't react to it and continues to work. Later, Shizuko arrives to check on Sarah and notices her diligently working, even using water to scrub. This impresses her, so she goes inside to prepare some food for the zombie. But Teramoto strictly warns her not to give her any meat, which Shizuko agrees to. At the end of the day, she gives Sarah some fruit and expresses gratitude for her work. The zombie then heads back to the warehouse, but on the way, she is bullied by some kids who throw stones at her. Regardless, she doesn't react and continues on her way. Shortly after, Sarah encounters 3 thugs who also start harassing her. One of them even stabs her shoulder with a knife, but she remains unaffected and continues to walk. When she arrives at the warehouse, she removes the knife from her shoulder and proceeds to eat her food. The next morning, she returns to the house but doesn't respond to Shizuko when she greets her a good morning. Sarah continues her usual tile cleaning task, while Kenichi runs around the house, taking numerous Polaroid photos. He even takes a photograph of Sarah from behind while she's working. Most zombies like brains, but Kenichi's brains like that zombie. In the afternoon, one of the workers gets a hold of the sensual picture taken by Kenichi. He shows it to his companion, commenting on how attractive Sarah is. His friend is repulsed and remarks that she's a zombie, but the perverted worker insists that she's still a woman. As the day ends, Shizuko gives Sarah food once again and praises her work. The zombie then heads to the warehouse, and on the way, she is again bullied by the kids and thugs. Despite everything, she doesn't hurt anyone everyone and silently endures all the abuse. The next day, Shizuko greets Sarah with a good morning, as usual, but the latter ignores her and gets to work again. Later, when she tries to do some cleaning with water, she can't find the hose anywhere. Sarah then heads to the storage room to search for it. Unfortunately, the two workers have been waiting for her arrival, and they immediately grab her. She doesn't fight back as the workers start taking advantage of her. Shortly afterward, Teramoto is taking a walk when he notices one of the workers leaving the storehouse. He then peeks inside and sees another man assaulting Sarah. This horrifies him, but instead of helping her, he silently leaves. The following morning, Sarah arrives at the house and begins working, while Kenichi goes outside to play by himself. But in the afternoon, he is carried home by the workers in an unconscious state. It turns out Kenichi fell into the pond while playing and tragically passed away. This leaves Shizuko distraught, and she begins to scream over her son's lifeless body. Moments later, she comes up with an idea and goes to find Sarah. She brings the zombie inside and desperately asks her to bite Kenichi to bring him back. Sarah is hesitant at first, but upon Shizuko's insistence, she eventually agrees to bite the child. At this moment, Teramoto arrives and is horrified by the scene. He tries to stop what's happening, but his insane wife doesn't let him. In the end, he hurriedly throws a knife at Sarah and stabs her back, but it turns out to be too late as she has already bitten the boy. Moments later, Kenichi opens his eyes and affectionately hugs Sarah, shocking everyone. This angers Shizuko, who grabs her son and reminds him that she is his mother. She then takes him to his room and tries to take care of him. However, the boy is completely different from before and refuses to speak or eat anything. Later, we see Sarah removing the knife from her body and trying to treat her injuries. She recalls the hug Kenichi gave her earlier and feels emotional. At this moment, Teramoto suddenly appears and apologizes for stabbing her. He offers to help with her wounds and the docile zombie allows him to. However, it turns out the shady man has other intentions. He immediately begins to undress her and takes advantage of her. Shizuko passes by the same room and is dismayed to see her husband cheating on her with a zombie. Afterwards, Sarah is heading back to the warehouse when she is once again bombarded with stones by the kids and stabbed by the thugs. However, she ignores them and continues to recall the hug she received from Kenichi. Once she returns to the warehouse, she extracts the knife from her body and begins to recall fragments of memories from her time as a human. The next morning, Sarah arrives at work as usual, but this time an angry Shizuko doesn't greet or acknowledge her. Later, while Shizuko is working in the garden, she notices Kenichi approaching Sarah. This makes her very jealous, so she immediately scolds her son and asks him to come to her. Elsewhere, Teramoto is seen very stressed and is researching everything about zombies and their traits. Next, Shizuko is watering flowers in the garden when she notices Kenichi suddenly collapsing on the stairs. The couple rushes towards their son and tries to wake him up, but to no avail. They begin to panic, but Sarah calmly approaches them and slices Shizuko's arm. She then pours the blood into Kenichi's mouth, after which the boy finally wakes up. In the next scene, we see a depressed Shizuko lying on the couch. She asks her husband if their son has become a zombie. However, Teramoto doesn't think so and suggests it might just be an allergic reaction. He explains that it takes years to fully become a zombie, and by the time Kenichi grows up, new treatments might be developed. This prompts Shizuko to breathe a sigh of relief, but when she looks out the window and notices Kenichi and Sarah roaming around, it makes her very sad. In the evening, Sarah decides to find some human blood to feed Kenichi. She grabs a butcher knife and heads to the warehouse. On the way, she is bullied by the thugs again, who stab her as usual. However, this time, she bravely fights back and manages to kill all of them. The next day, we see Shizuko still collapsed on the sofa, exhausted by everything that has happened. Meanwhile, Kenichi arrives at Sarah's warehouse, and she gives him the blood of the victims she murdered. This makes the boy very happy, and he takes some Polaroid pictures with Sarah for their memories. Afterward, she heads to the house and continues her regular work. Teramoto observes her from a distance and whistles for her to come over. The zombie obediently heads inside, and Teramoto takes her to a room. Meanwhile, Shizuko hears their footsteps and goes upstairs to check what's going on. She notices her husband stitching up Sarah's wounds, which fills her with anger. Sarah also looks directly at her and makes eye contact, prompting Shizuko to leave. In the next scene, we see Shizuko in the kitchen angrily cutting some meat. When Sarah passes by, she throws some meat on the floor for her to eat, but the zombie doesn't eat it and instead tries to give it back. An enraged Shizuko cuts the meat in her hands, hurting Sarah in the process. Teramoto arrives at this moment and is disappointed to see his wife's behavior. However, he walks away from there without saying a word. word. Shizuko tries to follow her husband to confront him about his cheating, but she soon comes across a room where she finds a box full of Polaroid pictures of Sarah and Kenichi. Filled with rage, she immediately goes to her husband's study and grabs the gun. However, she accidentally pulls the trigger, and the bullet hits her husband and instantly kills him. Shizuko is horrified by her actions, but she's still determined to finish off the zombie. Meanwhile, Sarah hears the commotion downstairs and flees from the house with Kenichi. Shizuko also follows her outside and kills the two perverted workers on her way. Following this, an intense pursuit ensues, during which Sarah finally recalls her past when she was human. One day, she and her husband were on their way to the hospital for the birth of their child. Unfortunately, the young couple was attacked by a horde of zombies. The husband got out of the car to protect his wife, but was soon attacked and transformed into a zombie. Despite the dire situation, Sarah managed to escape and rushed to the hospital. There, she gave birth via C-section, but unfortunately, her child was stillborn. Sarah was deeply distraught as her life shattered in the blink of an eye. To make matters worse, she was eventually captured by Teramoto's friend, who turned her into a zombie and used her for his slave business. Returning to the present, Sarah and Kenichi are running through the forest, but she eventually becomes exhausted and collapses. This allows Shizuko to catch up to them and aim a gun at Sarah, but before she can pull the trigger, she notices her son desperately trying to protect the zombie. This prompts Shizuko to burst into tears as she realizes that she has truly lost her son. Meanwhile, Sarah also gets up and the two immediately flee the scene. Shizuko is so devastated by the sight that she shoots herself in the stomach and dies. Hearing the gunshot, Kenichi suddenly stops and returns to his fallen mother. He still seems to care for her despite everything and begins to bite Shizuko. Sarah is also moved by the gesture, so she joins the boy in biting his mother. Shortly after, Shizuko opens her eyes and tearfully hugs her son. Seeing this emotional moment, Sarah realizes she's no longer needed and her dream of becoming a mother will never come true. The movie comes to an end as she shoots herself in the head, ending her tragic life. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.